Hi, welcome to Science and Stuff, the show where we talk about science and stuff. But today, we're mostly talking science because we have a very special guest. I'm Anna Wenger, the showrunner of Mission Unstoppable, everyone's favorite TV show about the amazing leaders in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. You can catch Mission Unstoppable Saturday mornings on CBS, and the new season of Mission Unstoppable premieres January 2nd. So you gotta watch it, it's really good. So what are we doing here on a Thursday? This is a special bonus episode of Science and Stuff featuring an incredible guest. You've seen her on TikTok. You've seen her in Elle and Vogue magazines. She's saving lives, literally. It's Dr. Anna Blakney, a bioengineer working on the COVID-19 vaccine right now. And she is joining us from London. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
Great name. Love it. You're killing it already. Welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got to be one of the scientists working on the COVID vaccine?
Yes, so I am currently a research fellow at Imperial College London, obviously working on a COVID-19 vaccine, but my background is actually in engineering. So I did a chemical engineering degree for my undergraduate and a bioengineering degree for my PhD, and then went on to do more immunology training.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. I love how lettered you are in science. And you're in London right now. Tell us where you're working in London right now.
Yes, I'm in London. I work at Imperial College London, which is a university that's right in the heart of central London, which is really fun.
Yes, and one of the best universities, is my understanding from when I was looking up programs in high school. And I thought, Imperial College might be a little bit out of my league. So I'm glad that you are doing so well at such a great facility. And now, in addition to you being, a biomedical engineer, is that your official title?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Okay, great. In addition to you being a biomedical engineer, you're a TikTok star, which is, of course, the true American dream, to be a TikTok star. And I think we have one of your videos to show our audience.
Here's
so go
3
ahead.
things you need to know about cold storage for vaccines. You may have seen that the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine needs to be stored at -80 degrees, a temperature you would normally find in the Arctic. So why so cold? RNA vaccines are a relatively new technology, so scientists just haven't had that much time to optimize the storage conditions for them, but I guarantee you we're all working on this. The reason this makes distributing vaccines challenging, unless you live in the Arctic where it is -80, is because we don't have a lot of -80 freezers around. These are common in academic labs and some other institutions, but your normal clinic wouldn't have these. However, the Moderna vaccine can be stored for 6 months at -20, which is a normal freezer that you probably have in your home. Let me know if you have any comments or questions about storage or distribution of vaccines in the comments.
That is so cool. I love it that, the public needs this information so much that you're just blowing up on TikTok. Like, people need it. They love it. They want to hear it. So tell us how you decided to start making these videos.
Yeah, so I actually got a call one day from Team Halo, which is an organization that was started as a collaboration between the UN and the Vaccine Confidence Project. And the idea is to directly connect scientists who are working on COVID-19 vaccines to the public through TikTok. So it's all about being able to show people how we make vaccines, how we test them, and be there to answer their questions that they may have.
That's awesome. And obviously, whoever came up with that idea, the Halo Project, it's a great idea because it is a service that the public needs. Because as you know, there's so much false information out there about the vaccine that having access to a real scientist, somebody like you who's working on it, I think is just vital for the public to understand what's going on. What would you say the top 3 things that you want the public to know about the COVID-19 vaccine?
Yeah, so I get lots of questions, but I would say the main things that people have questions about, and it's really good to be able to communicate about, are one, is the vaccine being rushed? So, normally it takes 5 to 10 years to be able to develop a vaccine, but we've been able to do it so much faster this year because, all the scientists and clinicians and funders and regulated are focused on, one virus, which doesn't normally happen. So we've been able to coordinate so much more than normal.
Yes, it's funny what happens when all of the world works together on something, how quickly we can achieve things.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think that's kind of just one of the amazing experiences about this is just how much cooperation and collaboration has gone on this year.
Yeah, hopefully we'll learn a lesson from it for sure.
Absolutely. So 2 is just about the safety of the vaccine. So this is obviously of huge concern to the public, but also to scientists, right? So we don't want to distribute a vaccine that would harm the public in any way. So this is why we have to complete all the phases of clinical testing just as normal. So we've been able to do that quickly this year, but we haven't been able to skip any of those steps.
That's great. Good.
And then Yep. So the third one is actually pretty specific to RNA vaccines. So I get a lot of questions about whether RNA will change your DNA. So, is there any lasting change in your cells going forward? And the answer to this is no. It's actually an uphill battle to even get the RNA into your cells, and it lasts for 3 to 5 days, and then your body naturally degrades it. So it doesn't go anywhere anywhere near the DNA in the nucleus, and it just gets degraded naturally.
Right. And what you're bringing up now specifically, which I think a lot of people don't realize, is that the COVID-19 vaccine is what's called an RNA vaccine, which is different than the way that traditional vaccines work, right? So not only was it able to be made quickly because it's not that old type of vaccine, but also it's because it's this RNA type of vaccine, right? Isn't that a bit faster to make than the old type of vaccine?
Yep, absolutely. So it's a relatively new type of vaccine, but actually the first clinical trial for RNA was done in 2013. So we do have some idea about, the platform in general, although this was the first time that it was shown how well it works. But you'll notice that the 2 front runner vaccines, so the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine that's already approved now, and the Moderna vaccine that will be approved very likely shortly, they're both RNA vaccines, which I think really shows to highlight how rapidly we can make and develop those vaccines. But also now seeing that they have 95% efficacy, they're also really good vaccines.
That's awesome. I just love that. I love it that there's this new way to make a vaccine. I was going to ask, I wanted to tell the audience, if you have any questions for Dr. Blakney, go ahead and type it into the chat on Twitch. We will ask her those questions here live. Don't be shy. No question is a dumb question. I always worry after I say that. But really, no question is a dumb question. Ask away. She's happy to answer. That's what she's here for. So just to repeat, the 3 main things that you want the public to know is people say, oh, wasn't it too rushed? And your answer is, no, it was not rushed. It was rushed in the sense that everybody worked together and banded their resources to come up with this vaccine in a very fast way. When asked, is it safe? Your answer is, hey, look, it's gone through every single regulation that is required of a vaccine, all the testing that needs to be done. So absolutely, it is safe, which I think is a big thing that the public needs to know. It is safe. It is safe. I know it seems fast, but it's safe. And then as for the long-term side effects of the RNA type of vaccine, the answer is none, basically, because the RNA degrades within, what did you say, 3 to 5 days, something like that?
3 to 5 days, yeah. So, obviously with these trials, people are often caught off guard. It's like, oh, you've only been doing it for 9 months. And that's true. That's how long these clinical trials have gone on for. But because we've been studying RNA vaccines in humans since 2013, we do have a pretty good idea of the long-term safety profile. And so, to take the necessary precautions, we continue to follow these people out for longer in the clinical trials. But from what we know, there's no reason to think that there would be any other differences in the long-term side effects.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So why don't you just go into some more detail about, is this the same as the regular flu vaccine? Or actually, I think we skipped a page here, which is, tell us about how an RNA vaccine works differently compared to a traditional vaccine.
Yes. So with any type of vaccine, the goal is to train your immune system to recognize a certain protein. So for the coronavirus vaccine, this is the spike protein on the surface of the virus. And how an RNA vaccine works is that instead of injecting you with a protein, which is kind of an old way of making vaccines, we inject RNA directly into your muscle, and then that RNA codes for the spike protein. So it gets into your cells, and then it gives your cells the instructions on how to make the spike protein. So then that trains your immune system to recognize the spike protein. And if you're ever, exposed to COVID, then you are prevented from getting the disease.
That is just incredible. And I yesterday when we were talking, you mentioned that that you compare RNA to like an app, right?
Yes. So there's kind of three important biological molecules in your cell. And so DNA, RNA, and proteins. And to think about how, these work and interact, I think about a smartphone, which, everybody understands because we're constantly on them now, right?
Yes.
So DNA is like the hard drive on your smartphone. It has all the code of all the programs and any activity you could possibly want to do on your smartphone. Right. RNA is like an app. So it's the same code, it's just in kind of a more user-friendly form, like Spotify or email or pictures. And then a protein is the actual activity you would do on your smartphone. So taking a photo or listening to music or writing an email.
Yeah. So the RNA actually instructs your body how to make the spike protein that will kill the coronavirus? I'm learning! Yay! Thank you. We had a question from someone in our audience. If you've already had COVID, do you still need to get the vaccine?
Great question. So this is really important because there's kind of two ways you can get immunity to the virus, right? So you can get it from a natural infection, which is by getting COVID, or from getting the vaccine. And we've seen thus far that when you have a natural infection, your immunity or your antibodies last 3 to 6 months after your infection. So it's not very long. And so because of this, these people that had already been infected with COVID were actually included in the clinical trial to see that if you then get the vaccine on top of that, does it increase your immunity? And what they found from doing that study was that it does indeed increase your immunity. So that means that people that have already had COVID can and should still get the vaccine because it will just continue to boost that immunity and make sure it lasts long enough to make sure that you're protected.
We have another question here. How come we need to get 2 different shots for the vaccine? That's a good question.
That's a great question. So really, this is just because the second dose makes your immunity so much higher. So if you kind of think about every dose of the vaccine as it's kind of like a fake infection, right? You're not really infected, but your body thinks that you've been infected with a virus. So the second time you get infected, it really sends off those alarm warning bells like, oh, this pathogen is around. We really need to generate an immune response to this. And it goes up a lot higher. Yes, for most vaccines, you need to get 2 doses of it, although there are some currently in clinical trials for COVID looking at can we generate this immune response with just a single dose.
And how many people were in the trials for the vaccine?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's a different number for each of the clinical trials. So phase 1 is small, that's the safety, and it's usually around 100 people. Phase 2 is much larger. It depends, but usually it's about 1,000 to 3,000 people. And then the efficacy trial is huge. So in the efficacy trial, over 40,000 participants are given the vaccine or a placebo to see if it actually prevents getting the disease.
Whoa. When did they do that? When did they do that? I missed that part.
People have been busy this year.
Yeah, no kidding. They did that quickly. No, I do remember a friend of mine who was a nurse like a few months ago was like, we're testing the vaccine. So, we're just writing under your name, working on COVID-19 vaccine so that everybody knows that they can ask you questions. Oh, that's great. And is this the same as the regular flu vaccine? Is it the same type of vaccine?
It's a great compare and contrast, because I think RNA really shows how far we've come since vaccines like the flu vaccine. So the flu vaccine is one of the oldest types of vaccines, actually. So we take the flu virus, we grow it in eggs, and then we inactivate the virus after we harvest it out of the eggs. And so
when you say eggs, sorry to interrupt you, you mean actual chicken eggs?
Chicken eggs, yeah, it's quite bizarre. It's a really old process. It was developed in like the 1950s. And so it hasn't, right? This is still how we're making the flu vaccine in 2020, although hopefully that will change in the future. But we kill the virus, make it inactive, and then that's the vaccine. So that takes a really long time to make, which is kind of part of the reason that the flu vaccine isn't a very effective vaccine. Actually, we usually in February of every year, we have to decide what strain it's going to be so that we can distribute it in October. So, because there's around 6 months in there where it's just a lead up time, in that time, the flu mutates and changes, and then it's not a great vaccine anymore by the time it gets to people. Right. So that's a very old way of making vaccine. Whereas with RNA, we're able to do it super quickly. So I could make a new RNA vaccine in the lab in about a week, as long as you know the protein that you need to encode. And then, we and others were able to get into clinical trials really quickly. So we first started making the vaccine on the 20th of January, and our clinical trial started on the 15th of June. So we were able to make, characterize, and do the preclinical testing for the vaccine in that time. Moderna, which is obviously a large company, was able to do that much faster. So they were in the clinic in 66 days, which is pretty remarkable.
That's amazing. Oh, we had a couple. Okay, we've had a couple questions go by. The first one was how do the RNA vaccines get produced? Is it machine by hand? How does that work? And how quickly can they get produced?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well, because that's kind of the cool thing about RNA vaccines, actually, is we say that they're made completely synthetically. So this means that we don't need cells or eggs in huge bioreactors to be producing a protein or a virus or something like that. We can actually just create RNA synthetically in a test tube. So this means that we don't need as much large machinery to be able to create it. We do it much faster.
Right, because you're literally growing the virus in eggs to make it the other way. Yeah, so this is
inefficient, right? Yeah. And each one of those eggs is like hand inoculated with the virus. So it's just such an inefficient process.
Yeah.
Whereas RNA, in a 100 milliliter glass, so like similar to this size of glass, I could make 1 million doses of a vaccine.
That's awesome and crazy. That's great.
Yeah, so it's way more efficient. So as far as how quickly we can make them, so Pfizer and BioNTech estimate that they can make and distribute 50 million by the end of this year, and then 1.2 billion in 2021. So that's a pretty large amount of vaccines to be making.
That's fantastic news. That's great news. Yeah, by the end of this year, what did you say, 50 million? By the end of the year?
50 million, yeah.
Wow, that's great. Well, I'm so glad that the science and industry has come up with this great new way of making vaccines, because that's saving us right now. A quick question from our audience: what is causing Bell's palsy in some of the vaccine recipients? Have you heard of it? I hadn't heard this, the Bell's palsy.
I have, yeah. So this is a really interesting thing, actually, because I think a lot of misinformation has actually been going around on TikTok and on Instagram, actually. So the lowdown on Bell's palsy is there was an FDA report that was published on the 10th of December. And in that report, they say every side effect that was observed in the clinical trial. And so in the vaccine arm, there were 4 cases of people that got Bell's palsy during the trial. But something that's really important.
Is this out of the 40,000? Is this out of the 40,000? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So exactly.
Think of
and
it
so
that
that's
way.
a great point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the thing is actually, so then they go back to the statistics and people, it is a just random thing that happens to people. So they go back and look and see if that frequency is different than the frequency in just the normal population and whether it could be causal from the vaccine. And what they saw was that frequency wasn't any different. So 4 people out of 40,000 getting it is the same as the general population. So they
with or without the vaccine. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't causal. That means it wasn't caused by the vaccine. And thus, in their safety and efficacy paper, which they published a few days later, it's not considered to be a side effect of the vaccine. Of course, now that, that was observed during the clinical trial, we're very aware of that and monitoring everybody. And as it gets distributed, people will continue to be monitored, but it's not a side effect. Interestingly, it was a side effect of a different vaccine. So an old version of the flu vaccine, adjuvant, did cause Bell's palsy, but it's not a side effect for the COVID-19 vaccines.
Right. So everybody's like looking at it like, oh, is it the same thing? But as of right now, there's no evidence that it causes Bell's palsy any more than it normally occurs within the general population.
Exactly.
So, got it. Cool. And did we talk about, will COVID-19 mutate and how will scientists handle the mutation?
Yes. So it's very possible that it will mutate. And, actually there's already a mutation that's been observed in mostly Western countries called the D614G mutation. So what we're really concerned about, obviously people are monitoring this all the time because it's super important for whether the vaccine is going to work. And thus far, there's just a single mutation to the spike protein. That's what really matters. If the rest of the virus mutates, it's not such a big deal because the vaccine will still work as long as the spike protein is the same. So there's been one mutation thus far, and recent studies have shown that the vaccine will still work against this strain, so we don't need to change it. But we constantly monitor it because, as I said, it's really easy to make a new RNA vaccine, right? So if in the case that there was a mutation, then we would, just make a new vaccine, and then that could be distributed to everybody, as kind of a next generation vaccine, like we do every year for the flu vaccine.
Right. So the RNA vaccine has so many advantages, and what you're saying, even if it does mutate, we can make a new vaccine very quickly, but the old vaccine, which isn't old as of yet, we're speaking hypothetically, should still be able to track down very many different types of mutations simply because it's trained your immune system to attack the spike protein. So unless the spike protein changes, then it will still attack that virus.
Yep, exactly.
I'm learning so much about vaccines.
You're a pro.
Just love it. Well, thank you. And have you gotten the vaccine yet? Another question from our audience.
Great question. So I wanted to be a part of the clinical trial. I couldn't be a part of my own clinical trial because it's a conflict of interest.
Sure.
I wanted to sign up for a clinical trial to be one of the participants to get a vaccine. But when I signed up, part of the criteria was that you had to be negative for the antibodies because obviously, you can't have the antibodies going in because they won't know if the vaccine works or not.
Right.
So they screen everybody. And I, at that point, already had the antibodies. So I must have had COVID
but you
earlier
didn't
this
know.
year. Asymptomatically, yeah, I didn't have any symptoms.
Fully asymptomatically. So you didn't even look back and go, oh, there was that one day I was sneezing a lot or I had a bad headache. Like nothing, just zero symptoms, yet you've got the antibodies. Wow, that is...
Yeah. So... yeah, I'll definitely, I can't wait to get the vaccine, and I keep promising that I'll video it so people can see it on TikTok when I do it.
Yes.
But obviously, I'm I'm not really a high priority person. So it's probably going to be a few months until I have access.
Let us know when you're gonna. We'll come cover the story for you. Love
awesome.
it. It's very, very exciting. Awesome. Well, did we have any more questions from the audience? I think we are good. Is there anything else, any other message you have for the audience?
Yeah, I guess my main message is really, as part of Team Halo and TikTok, I think it's really important to just, be there to answer people's questions, which I'm very happy to do. I think a lot of times, people categorize people into this pro-vax and anti-vax narrative, but I think the majority of people really fall somewhere in between, and which we refer to as vaccine hesitancy. But I actually think it's great that people are questioning what they're putting into their bodies.
Right.
As scientists, we're really taught to be critical, and until you see the data and you can interpret it and make a conclusion. But not everybody has access to the data or may not be able to interpret it. So you're always relying on someone else to give you a conclusion, right? So yeah, I would just ask anybody, if you have questions, feel free to reach out on my TikTok. I'm happy to take requests for videos and answer any questions that you may have.
Yes. And let everybody know where you are on TikTok.
Yes, so my handle is at Anna Blakney.
Okay. Awesome. Elena, our producer, has some questions from Instagram that have come in, and she wants to go ahead and ask you. She's gonna hop on the mic and ask. Go ahead.
Great.
Since the 95% is being issued now, when is the 99%? Oh. When the 99% is released, can you revaccinate? Does that question make sense?
When the 99% is released, can you revaccinate? Do you understand what that means?
So I think what this person is getting at is that the current vaccine that's approved is 95% effective. That's actually, I think, the highest efficacy that has been shown.
I see.
But maybe theoretically, if there was a 99% effective vaccine, could you get that then? And I think, we would have to do a study and see what the data says to show whether you can, combine the vaccine regimens. But very likely you would be able to get the 99% protective vaccine. But what's really important to remember, too, is that 95%, scientists were hoping to get like 70% this year. We thought that would be like a really amazing efficacy for the first stab. So the fact that it's 95% is amazing, but that's reported as an average, right? So it's not, there's kind of a confidence interval on it. It's just the average efficacy that we observe. So it really means that it's like a range of 90 to 100% effective, which is really phenomenal. And actually, I'm not sure that we would ever get to a 99% effective vaccine. 95 is pretty good. But if we got there, I think, you'd be able to take it.
Nice.
Next question is, what are the possibilities of an allergic reaction? Do they monitor you after the shot?
Oh.
Yeah, so there were actually 2 cases of this when they first rolled it out in the UK, actually in NHS healthcare workers. Both of those workers had histories of severe allergic reactions to vaccines. And so I'm not sure why they weren't asked if they had a history of that. But now it's contraindicated. So it means that if you have a history of severe allergic reactions to vaccines, you should ask your GP before you get it. But they are monitoring people. So normally with the rollout here, it's been that people get the injection and then they wait for 15 minutes just to make sure that nothing happens. And even in those cases, I mean, in both of the patients that had a severe allergic reaction, they are both fine now. They were given an EpiPen and treated immediately. So they're okay. Right. But it's always a good idea to check with your GP before you get a vaccine.
Right. And but is it your recommendation that everyone should get the vaccine?
So it's indicated for certain people. So it's, there's certain age ranges. Right now it's approved for people that are 16 and up. In the future, they're continuing to do clinical trials for different demographics. So there's a pediatric arm, so looking at people under the age of 16. They're testing now pregnant women. So it really depends on, your age and your health. So if you have any sort of, medications that you take that might interfere with it. So in general, it's okay for people 16 and up, but if you have any sort of special health consideration, then ask your GP definitely before you get it.
Right. But if you don't have any special health consideration, there is no reason you should not get the vaccine. Correct?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, these vaccines are super safe and efficacious. So it's kind of, it's quite a feat that we're able to do this in just 9 months, really.
Yes, super safe and efficacious. Efficacious means they work really effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Another question. Are the results instant or is there a waiting period after receiving the vaccine? So like as soon as you get the shot, are you automatically...
Right. But would it be the second shot though? Because isn't it first and a second? Yeah.
Yep, great question. So you do have to wait a little bit for an immune response to kick in. So it looks like 2 weeks after the first vaccine, we start to see those antibodies start to kick in. But it's really 2 weeks after the second vaccine when your immunity peaks. So we don't yet know, we haven't found for this virus what's called a correlate of protection. So this is just a fancy way of saying something that we can measure in your blood that will tell us that you're not going to get the disease. So usually this is a certain level of antibodies. And so now we just kind of try to maximize that immunity. So you have the maximal antibody response that you would need. It's very likely, there's some level out there that you need to cross to be protected, but we don't know what that is yet. So it does take time to induce the immunity. And so 2 weeks after the second shot is really right now considered to be when you have an immune response.
And I'm sorry, you may have answered this before, but I want to ask again because I don't remember. How long does it last? Like how long? Because I know there's a lot of vaccines where it's like every 10 years you have to get like a booster or something like that. How long will this one last?
Yeah, so we don't know yet. So we are continuing to follow people out from the clinical trials, but that's the only way we can know for sure how long it will last. So obviously as time goes on, we learn more and more about this. From what we know now, so Moderna has published a big paper on this that showed that antibodies from their vaccine were high out for 3 months. If you look at the line, it's like flat, 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 flat across. And so I'm sure it will continue to keep going. But at this point, we don't know exactly when it trails off. So stay posted.
Thank you. Keep us posted with that one.
Yeah.
This is kind of similar to that. With the mutation of the virus, is it possible that the vaccine could be less effective?
Oh, we talked about that a little bit. With the mutation of the virus, is it possible that the vaccine could be less effective?
Yep, it's definitely possible. So that's why we continue to monitor it and see, how these vaccine responses react to a new virus. But nothing that we've seen yet. There's no strain that's been discovered yet that's really widespread and doesn't react to the vaccine.
Right. One more. And as she was saying before, RNA vaccines, even if there is a mutation, they can make them very quickly. And so that's a great thing. Okay, go ahead.
Kind of similar to this. How long would it take to get everyone vaccinated and how many priority levels are there?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question and a really tough question. So I'll give you my best estimate, but I would say nobody really knows for sure. So it depends on how quickly we can make vaccines. So that's actually a great one of the reasons why it's great to have multiple approved vaccines, not just the Pfizer and BioNTech one. So hopefully, Moderna gets approved soon as well, because that just means, they can separately be making vaccines and it's just going to vaccinate more people all over the world. So it will definitely take time to distribute that throughout, and we have to think about, people who live in developed countries that are already buying these vaccines. We're very privileged, right? Because you're going to have hopefully faster access to vaccines, but there's a whole world out there, right? And this virus has shown that it doesn't know any boundary. So we need to think about how do we equitably distribute the vaccine as well to more developing countries that may not have, as much access. They don't have their own vaccine program or the capital to necessarily be buying all these vaccines. So there's a lot of people working on that right now. The WHO has a really good program called COVAX where they're trying to, help all of these developing countries as well. But it's going to be, a huge logistical challenge to make sure that the whole world gets vaccinated. So, as soon as we can produce the 14 billion doses needed and get it out to everybody,
is the answer.
Yes.
Yes. No, that is tough to answer, but what's that? Oh, and also the priority. What's the priority level of who's going to get the vaccine first?
Yes, so it depends on what country you're in. So it's a little bit different depending on where you are. In the UK, it was 80 and up, and then 70 and up, and healthcare workers, and then just stepping down by age. It will be pretty similar to that everywhere. In the US, it's also age dependent, so the elderly as well as healthcare workers at this time. And that's really kind of informed by who's at most risk, right? So we know that elderly get a much more severe disease and have a higher risk of, a really severe disease as well as dying. And so we want to be able to prevent that. But healthcare workers, on the other hand, who are, so important right now and just have a huge burden on their hands, they're also exposed to it way more. And we don't want them getting sick. So they also are given first access to the vaccine.
Absolutely. I think we can all agree with that. Aw, this is a note from someone from our audience. Thank you for making me feel safe about receiving the vaccine, Dr. Blakney. Me too. Yeah.
My pleasure.
I thank you as well. And remember, keep up the great work, Dr. Blakney. This is so nice.
Thanks, guys.
No, seriously, we're so grateful to you and all of the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for spreading accurate information on TikTok and across social media, and for being on our show. Keep us updated. We'd love to talk to you again in a month and, just do some updates, and maybe we'll have some more questions. But thank you so much for being here. Remember, everybody in the audience, go to watch Anna's videos on TikTok. You want to do this. You can go to @Anna.Blakney. So check them out. We're going to be back on Monday, January 4th. Follow us on Twitch and on social at CBS Unstoppable. Subscribe on YouTube. Goodbye. Happy holidays. Goodbye. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Dr. Anna.